Welcome to Winning in the Workplace. I'm Maurice Velasquez, and I thank you all for attending. I appreciate the fact that we have some folks in the, I guess you can say in the studio. First of all, we have our guest speaker, Joel Kahn. He's going to come in a few minutes. Thank you very much for joining. I'm very excited about talking with him. He and I have had some great conversations, and we've been looking forward to this. We also have quite a handful of folks, so thank you all for coming. This is Winning in the Workplace podcast. The podcast is intended to be a conduit, a platform for great conversation on tactics, strategies, theories, tools, and practical insights on how to be a great leader as executives, as managers, and as supervisors. This is intended to be hard-hitting. It's intended to be challenging. It's intended to be instructional. Hopefully very helpful, very real world, very practical. We're trying to cover the main issues, things that tend to not be easily discussed or kind of superficially discussed in a lot of areas, in a lot of other places. We want to quite do the opposite here. We want to open the hood and dig deep, keep it simple, keep it entertaining, keep it enjoyable, but nonetheless to keep it very relevant and very practical. So with that in mind, today we have a really good show. We have Joel on studio with us. We're going to talk about one of the biggest challenges that executives have, and that is how to get out of the weeds so they can cast a vision, they can set clear expectations. All right, so let me set this up. Owners start their business with the desire to serve and to provide a fantastic product or a service to their customers. And they pretty much know how to do it. They tend to know how to do it. And that is the thing that keeps them and makes them incredibly successful. In other scenarios, when a company's already grown and they hire executives who know how to do the particular job in that area, they know how to do it. That knowledge tends to be extremely helpful because business owners tend to become everything. They tend to become the ones who cast the visions. They wear the executive hat. They're the ones who set up systems and processes. They set up they set up procedures, they set up processes. That means they know how to wear the manager hat, and they know how to implement. They know how to do sales. They know how to do customer service. They know how to fix the problems. That means that they know how to be frontliners. So business owners tend to have those three very important skills, those three hats, the executive hat, the middle management hat, and then the frontline hat. And again, those things tend to be focused on areas such as at the executive level, things having to do with vision and things having to do with numbers, with the outcomes, with the goals, the strategic direction. And they tend to be pretty good at that. At the middle manager level, they tend to know how to set up procedures, or they know how to do it. That's the most important thing about middle managers. They know how to organize things, and they pretty much know how to set things up. And like I said earlier, they're also really good at implementation. They know how to answer the phone. They know how to make the phone calls. They know how to take care of clients. They're a complete package for the most part because they know how to step in all those areas. And what they produce is they produce growth. They produce activity. They produce revenue. They produce excitement. Then eventually what happens is they start hiring people, which is fantastic because they need help. What are the things that they should get out of, and what are the things that they should stay involved with? Well, as business owners, the most difficult thing is how to transition out of being a middle manager, how to get out of that middle management role, and then how to be more executive. Now, there's some situations it's impossible for the owners or the executives to get out of being frontliners. For example, in law firms, I'm the owner and I'm the attorney. Well, I have to stay connected. I have to provide frontline customer service because I'm the attorney, or I'm the engineer, or I'm the doctor, or I'm the plumber. I'm the one that goes and fixes. I'm the mechanic. I'm the technician. I'm the one that goes out and takes care of the customer. So sometimes it's really difficult for the owner to get out of frontline service because I'm the one that provides the service. So usually what they need is they need a middle manager. They need an office manager. They need somebody to organize things. They need an assistant. So the position in which they tend to have the biggest need is one to organize for them, that middle position. I'm giving you the scenario of a small business growth as it grows and what the challenge is for them. Let's now turn to the other scenario. And that other scenario is one of a large corporation in which it's already established. They have executives, they have middle managers, and they have frontliners, and yet when we get brought into, when my company gets, or I get brought into a company to help them, I find the same dilemma, the same struggle. And that is that the managers want to step up and they want to lead the charge. They want to be much more of a guiding and much more of an organizing force in the organization, but they can't seem to get the executives out of the minutia of things. Then when we talk to the executives, they recognize that, yes, we very much like to control things. We know how to do things. And it's hard for us to get out of the minutia, get out of the details. And that's usually when we ask them and we talk to them why that is the case, they tend to appeal to the fact that, look, I need my managers to step up. I need my managers to organize things better. I need my managers to work better across departments, and I can't seem to do that. And they drag me into the weeds all the time. I get called, I get proposed things that I know that Department A has not talked to Department B, so therefore I have to be the one to go talk to Department B, and then I get triangulated, I get brought into situations, and then I have to go fix problems. I'm constantly having to ask, where are we with? Where are we with this? Where are we with that? Where are we with whatsoever? And I get pulled into that, and I sure wish that I had department managers that could organize amongst themselves and with each other much better so that I and the other executives could get out of the weeds. So there's this power struggle. There's this back and forth. There's this tug of war that exists between those layers at the executive level and at the middle management level because of who is driving and who should take the lead and who should get involved in the minutia. So one of the things that I get asked a lot by the executives is, well, what then should we be focused on? In many of the workshops, when I'm talking to the executives and I have groups of executives, I ask them these questions. I say, how many of you have your mission, vision, and value very well laid out or published, and usually half of the audience raises their hand and they say, we have it. Okay. Of the ones that don't have it, they tend to say, well, we kind of have it, but it's tucked in somewhere in some kind of folder, or yeah, we have it printed in the back of the warehouse. And then the other good 25, 30%, they pretty much admit that, look, we just don't have it. Well, that is a problem. That's an area where executives should spend more time developing and designing their mission, vision, value. Then I ask the question, how many of you have a strategic plan in place that you guys visit on a while? Again, it's the same percentages. Half of them have it. A good 20, 30% have it, but they're not really using it. And the others just don't have one. Then I say, all right, well, let me ask you this. Your org chart. Do you guys have an org chart that is updated and that you guys make sure that it's being kept updated? No, that one, an overwhelming majority of the attendees in my workshops and in my classes and the folks that I help, they don't have an org chart. And if they do have it, it is way outdated. And then the fourth thing I ask them is, all right, so let me ask you this. Do you guys have KPIs? Do you have key performance indicators? Very clear goals for your organization and for each one of your departments of what success means. On that one, I tend to hear from the CFOs a lot that, yeah, we know what the numbers are, but they're not familiar with them. No one's really keeping up with them. And there's a lot of vagueness around it. So please write down those 4 areas that executives should be focusing on. I really believe that if executives spent more time in those areas, they would have the wherewith which they could empower their managers to go and implement and organize things better. In other words, by focusing their attention on those key areas, it would allow them to communicate and cast a better vision to their managers. So let's review what those are. And then I want to bring Joe in, get his thoughts, and let's get into that conversation. So what are they? First, the mission, vision, and values. Number 2, the strategic plan. Do we have the strategic plan? Do we have the mission, vision, values very clearly published and appealed to throughout the organization? The third is the org chart. Do we have an org chart? The executive team is responsible to make sure that they have an org chart that is updated, probably every quarter or every 6 months, definitely at least once a year, and that it's published and made clear so that everyone knows who reports to whom and who's responsible in what areas. And number 4, KPIs. We're not going to dive as much into KPIs today, but basically it's a set of numbers that say, all right, in order for us to be successful, we should be reaching these numbers in these areas. This department should be reaching this. This department should be doing that. This report, and that's tied into your overall strategic plan. And so that's what executives should be focusing on. If they're not, What they're definitely going to do is they're going to dive into the weeds, get things organized. And oftentimes I can't tell whether it's because they don't want to spend their time working on KPIs, they don't know how to, or ultimately, yes, the middle managers who don't know how to step up. And what it usually needs, it needs an organizer. All this tends to need an organizer. And depending on the size of your organization, it's probably going to be a branch manager, or it's going to be an office manager, it's going to be a director of operations, it's going to be a COO. And therein lies a lot of the difficulties to determine how do you bring this person on board. What are the triggers to determine what that should be, what that should look like? What's the role of a COO? What are some of the things that executives trip over in bringing in a COO? I think that's a good way to set that up. So let me ask Joel, come on in and let's talk about this. Joel, did I mess that up? What are your thoughts about all that? or better yet, how much did I mess that up?
Zero. You messed up zero. It's a great start. You touched on a lot of points. There's a lot to unpack with everything that you had said.
Yeah. I mean, but let me ask you this, first of all, do you find the same dilemma that executives want to get out of the weeds? I rarely ever find executives who say, man, I am just excited that I'm in the pinnacle of my career. I'm making a lot of money, and I just love the fact that I'm waking up in the morning and I just cannot wait to go get into the weeds. I love when I get called into 4 different meetings where they're talking about 6 different opposing things, and that I can't seem to get my other work. I really look forward to that. I mean, I'm being very cynical, you know.
Right.
Look, do you know any executives that really love to stay in the weeds?
Well, there's always a 1 out of 100, right? There's always that person who says,
sure, of course,
right?
Yeah.
The earth will stop rotating on its axis if I don't go into the weeds today. But let's go with 99 times out of 100, and it might even be 100. Nobody wakes up and says, it doesn't matter what level you are, right? The CEO doesn't sit there and say, I can't wait to get in the weeds. Middle management, they might have their version of the weeds as well. Something to be aware of is that no matter where you are in the org chart or the accountability chart, you have a version of quote unquote the weeds. But specifically, an owner, CEO, a president, no, they do not wake up and before their first cup of coffee say, which weed patch can I get into today? Because that's what I'm really looking forward to.
I think they've been in the weeds for so long, and that there was a point in which they hired others to do it. There was probably a season in which that was going well, and then something fell apart, or they lost confidence in each other, and then the executives jump back in, and then it's hard to get them out, and then they get into bad habits again. And then those managers tend to back up and go, well, I mean, and then they're stuck. They don't know how to get out. One team doesn't know how to step up, and the other team doesn't know how to get out.
I would refer, it's almost like you run into, created these, as you're growing, especially the smaller you are, as you grow, the boundaries don't need to be as well defined.
Correct.
But as you grow more and more, you naturally, as a company, start defining those boundaries. Who is responsible for sales? Who is responsible for accounts payable and accounts receivable? And we all say, the accounting team is. But if you're a 2-person show, right, which a lot of entrepreneurial companies start as a 1-person show,
correct,
right, there are no boundaries. And as you grow, and let's say you grow organically, it's not by acquisition. But as you grow organically, you start creating boundaries, whether you realize it or not. And then it's, as you set those boundaries, people start having muscle memory. So you bring in a salesperson, and they might help out on collections. It's just something kind of crazy because they get paid when the company gets paid. 2 years into it, you've got 4 salespeople, let's say a staff accountant. They're not responsible. We want them selling. So those boundaries start being set. And again, whether on purpose or not. And then at some point in time, the CEO sees something and they go, wow, I really need to go over there. And they break that boundary. Right. And then they look at it and they come out of it, and the person says, okay, now where am I now? Like, I had this boundary, I had this, I don't want to say box, but I had this, some type of shape around me of all I knew what to do. And now the CEO came in and did this. Are we yin and yanging, or are they just completely out of it? I need to go back to taking on 100% of it. Earlier,
you said that in the early phases of things, those boundaries aren't very sharp and defined because they're probably trying to figure those out, right? I find that it's oftentimes the 3 stages seem to be when the executive has to manage directly. The second one tends to be when they manage with the managers. And then the third one is when they manage through the managers. That transition gets lost to where they tend to get stuck back and forth. They can't seem to make those, like you said, those boundaries very clear. The ultimate growth is that, right? It's to learn how to manage through the managers.
Right. 100%. That's how you become effective as a CEO.
Is that where scalability really comes in? I can scale myself into managers, then I can scale them into growth, and then I can become more efficient. If I keep diving into the middle, then I'm interrupting everything.
Correct. One way to look at it, it's a very black and white, and sometimes it's a numbers geek way, is each person that you add should have some type of X effect on your business.
Okay.
So let's say you're a solopreneur and you sell widgets, right? You're selling them, you're making them, you're collecting the money, all of those things. Let's say the first thing you need to do is bring in someone who's going to make a widget for you. Well, that should allow you to sell X amount more. So you might pay this person a certain dollar amount, but you'll realize X, 3X, 5X, 10X in additional revenue, which will more than cover what they're doing. So that's how I look at scalability, really from one person to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16 and so on, is that the more you're willing to let other people do, as long as they're successful at it. Let's face it, we've all hired employees who have actually they've had a negative return as opposed to a positive return. And sometimes it's we've hired the wrong employee. Sometimes it's the wrong employee that came to work for us. That is how you truly scale, is to find those people that can become really multipliers for you. You look around and you go, who are my multipliers? Who's going to let me go from focusing so much time on 12 different things?
Let's take a pause here and let's back up a little bit. Let me introduce you. So Joel, you've been a COO of companies like Gparency, and that was a FinTech startup, correct?
It is correct. It has to be. We're a premier commercial mortgage brokerage, and we've got a FinTech piece that is kind of accelerating us to where we want to go.
Owners tend to be very hesitant about wanting to bring on COOs. Do you find that to be the case?
I do agree with that. Yeah, I think let's start with the entrepreneurs. We'll start businesses that are, let's go 2 million to 10 million. Typically started as a solopreneur. They've built it. It's theirs. It's their baby. There's a massive emotional attachment to that business. They look at it and say, this is mine. And what they run into is, I got it to here. I don't know how somebody else is going to help me. So they have a little bit of blinders on, which is what's made them successful, right? The blinders, there's always going to be two sides. You have those blinders of success on, and you want to build this business. Go back to our widget business. No one can build a better widget. No one can sell widgets better than, right? So I'm the best widget builder, and I am the best widget salesperson. That might be true, but at some point in time, you're going to run into, if you're good at being in a certain size and you want to get into the weeds and you want to do everything and you're comfortable at that size, then there's no reason to look at ways to grow. It's when you want to 3X, 5X, 10X that growth is when you need to do a little bit of self-evaluation or a lot of self-evaluation to say, I'm really good at, it takes 10 things to run my business. I'm really good at 10 of them. Let's use the high ego one. Mm-hmm. But then you have to look at it and go, what are you great at doing? What are the 2 or 3 things that you're great at doing? Or where can you find someone who's great, almost as great as you, let's say? So maybe you're the best widget salesperson and maybe you're the best widget builder. But do you have a widget builder that can come in and do 95, 98% of what you could do? If the answer is yes, then it makes all the sense in the world. Bring in a widget builder and you're the best widget salesperson. Go sell that many more. When you start growing like that, then you have to start looking at the operational side.
I don't find that conversation is often had between the owners and the new COO. They don't have that open conversation saying, all right, you're going to come in and I'm really good in these areas. I'm going to focus on this and you're going to focus on that. Usually it's a very vague conversation, and then the struggle happens. The COO wants to run things, and then the executive or executives tend to start arm wrestling with them. It's no, not that, not that. And then eventually 18 months later, there's
I got it, right?
An owner can stay very involved in sales, right? It's a very frontline, very much in the weeds of things. They could also be involved in training people, or they could be involved in setting up procedures. There's nothing that says that the owners can't stay in certain areas in which they're good. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, that 100%. That's what I'm saying. That's part of that self-evaluation is what are you really good at and what do you love doing? Because if you can combine those 2 things, and oftentimes if there are 10 things to run a business, what you're really good at and what you love doing are not 10 of them. There's one, two, maybe three of them. And you talk to some CEOs and they love sales. They love picking up the phone. They love meeting
Correct.
people. They love doing those things. If you love doing it and that's what you're really good at, right? Go grow the company. I'll take care of the homestead.
Let's chase that a little bit. So in that scenario, for example, you have the owners that are very sales driven, they should involved in sales, and then no sooner or later, the COO walking down the hall on a Friday and he finds the owner in an accounting meeting. And it's like, oh, wait, I thought, well, there's been this problem that the CFO has been telling me about. And you go, okay, wait a minute. He was talking to me about that. I think it's really being very clear with each other, right? Us as the owners are going to do these areas. You as the CEO, you're going to focus. And the more clarity that is brought into who does what tends to flow a lot better if you have that awkward conversation of perhaps during the interview process, or at least acknowledging the first 3 months, we're going to figure that out. But we're not just going to leave it up to, chance that somehow we'll figure it out. I find that when you leave it up to chance to eventually figage it out, it ends up being an 18-month, and then there's a parting of the ways 2 years later.
Yeah, that's a really great insight that you have, Maurice, and 100% agree with you. And it needs the conversation, the difficult conversation needs to happen. If it's not happening organically, if somebody's in that COO role, or, some people call it second in command, EOS is trademarked integrator. If someone comes to me and says, what's the one thing I should do in an interview? And it's counterintuitive, but it's have at least a little bit of the tough conversation to find out if you're going to be successful or not in the role. As a COO, right, there's a thought when the COO shows up that everything's going to get much better. Everything's going to be calmer. Everything's going to get better. All these things are going to start running smoother. Oftentimes the day after their first day. But right, we try to set some expectations. But part of that smoothness needs to happen or be discussed in the beginning, which is, I think, whether it's the first interview or the third interview, at some point, it is, how do you see the two of us working together in the future? And I've spoken with other COOs, other integrators. I've got a couple of groups I'm part of, and almost always the ones who are successful have that difficult conversation up front. And I've spoke to one person and they have that difficult conversation a couple times during the interview. They really like the person. They like the business. They like phenomenal person who's the CEO. Right. All checked all these boxes except the last one. They did say, they go, you know what? Great person. Great business, it's going to stay where it is because they won't let pretty much anybody do it, right? But they weren't going to let the COO come in. They couldn't even have the conversation up front. Well, we'll see what it looks like in 3 months or 6 months or a year. And the candidate told me, they said there were so many red flags in that regard because they want to help the company grow. COOs typically will have that personality of, let me see how I can help you. Let me see how I can help you be successful.
They don't want to be the kingmakers. I find that COOs are happier and much more self-fulfilling when they help others be successful. They like to be at the center of it because they see they're good at organizing things, but they tend to be very, very fulfilled with helping the owners and the company grow. And even if it means that I'm going to be here for 3 or 5 years or 7 years, I'll find somebody else. They're easier to jump because they understand their value being more of helping the organization get to the next level.
Certainly they want the company to grow. They want it to be financially successful. They want to, I haven't met a COO who wants to do it for free. I'm sure there are some successful ones out there who are working maybe in the nonprofit sector where they're donating their time and they get self-actualization from that. But they want all the successes. What's not important to them is the recognition piece oftentimes. Right. Yeah. That comes more personality, and maybe I'm skewing that a little bit towards me. They like to sit back and know that things are operating the way they should be. They like to know that employees are engaged. The word happy is a tough word sometimes. If you can get an employee that's happy and engaged and fulfilled and doing what they want with the people they want to do it with, like that's a huge success metric for many COOs.
Right. All right, so let me ask you about what I call the others. The CEO, the owner, has a good conversation with the incoming COO, only to find out that, okay, obviously the CFO had been given a lot of the COO responsibilities, or there was perhaps a director of operations, or one of the managers was actually operating as a COO. Unfortunately, sometimes the promise was made at some point that you, Henry, you're going to be the future COO, only to find out that I just got hired. I'm the CEO now. Henry's a little upset. There's others that have been given that role or that function, or they took it upon themselves, and that oftentimes is given to the CFO. The COO is now butting heads a little bit with the CFO because of that clarity hasn't been made with that other person, which is what I call the other factor.
Right.
The CEO and I are on the same page as to my role, but man, I'm finding that other C team members who were carrying the role or some functions of the COO are not crowding into me, or I'm stepping into their lane. So there's this conflict, and the CEO is caught in the middle. Have you come across that?
I've come across it. Again, it's part of that upfront conversation during the interview process. And one question that can be asked is, who's excited to have for you to bring in a COO? Who's concerned about it? During the leadership team meetings, there needs to be kind of a clear definition. So I've gone in where C-suite is fundamentally even. They're all C-suite. And I've gone in where you've got the owner, the CEO, the COO, then everybody rolls up to the COO. In that situation, people will become territorial, but a good COO will come in knowing that that's something that they'll be going up against, at least in the beginning. And whether you're the receptionist, whether you're a salesperson, whether you're a CFO, whether you're a vice president, fill in whatever. The COO position is one of, wait, what are they doing? And CFO is very simply defined. CRO, let's say, Chief Revenue Officer, Chief Marketing, right? Those are very specific. The COO has a much wider breadth of duties and things, tasks, projects that they can work on, because typically they've got a varied background within a company. They've been exposed to a lot of different things.
Let me ask you your opinion on this. Interesting phenomenon that I've noticed the last year, because we do a lot of recruiting. Whenever we're hired to recruit for a COO, the tendency tends to be that we definitely want the top candidates to meet with, of course, the CEO and the CFO, maybe a board director or somebody above. And of course, we want them to meet the leadership team. But I find that a lot of empowerment is given to that leadership team, that upper managers, on the say-so of who to bring on as the COO. Top candidate, really, really good. Nope, they didn't like him. Then top candidate number 2, really good. The CEO liked him. Heck, as a matter of fact, the CEO and the owner liked him. They bring him in. Nope, leadership team said no. Top candidate number 3. Nope, top candidate number 4. Have you?
See a pattern here?
Was that?
We're seeing a pattern here.
Yeah, we're seeing a pattern. Nobody wants to hire their boss. The COO is the one that's going to come in between them. Talk to me a little bit about that. You tell teams like that about, okay, what's the right role in getting them involved, getting their input, or having them have veto power?
It's very interesting, because I've run into this a few times. And in the recruiting world, right, you've got different theories. One, I have to be careful what I say and how I say it of who might listen. But I had a situation where someone I knew spoke with a couple of owners, moved forward with the candidacy. They did not speak with their top accounting person, let's say that. And top accounting person was really pushing for the COO to come in, but their feelings were hurt when they weren't interviewing them. It turns out the person who told me the story said they had been there about 3 months, 4 months, and the top accounting person, super person, just a great person, but went to the owner, and the owner said, they said, well, why didn't you have this person interview me? Yada, yada, yada. They said, well, I just didn't think it was the right thing. And the COO said, oh, that's good. And the owner was like, what do you mean that's good? The CEO looked at him and said, I wouldn't have taken the position, because that top accounting person who was really put on a pedestal found out that they just weren't doing a good job. Maybe they would have nixed that COO, you don't know, but go a little bit long here. What I guess my point is, I struggle with, should subordinates interview their potential boss? I had another situation where I was part of, and the recruiting firm said, absolutely 100%, they need a say in this. That say became this sense of entitlement, where everybody came in and said, no, we do not like this person whatsoever. And what we gleaned from it very quickly was, they just didn't want a boss, because the person who they were reporting to, there was no accountability whatsoever. They didn't lead them. They didn't manage them. They didn't hold them accountable. They did nothing.
Yeah, because Joel, I agree with you, because one of the reasons why a company is looking for CO is because they need the upper management, the leader, the management team to be better organized, and they're not organized, which is why they can't seem to scale. They can't seem to flow things very efficiently. So therefore, they've made a decision, we need a COO. So obviously, somebody has acknowledged that this team needs a lot of direction that I, the CEO, and perhaps a couple of the partners can't seem to provide. So therefore, we need to bring somebody in. And if that's understood, well, then that management team, they're going to be very hesitant to being organized. Larry, who we just interviewed, that's who's going to organize this, and so like you said, I don't have a problem with it being part of the conversation, but if they have veto power, let me ask you this, what does a good COO look like?
I think a good COO will have a wide breadth of experience or knowledge when it comes to running a company. So they've been exposed to sales. It'd be great if they in the financial advisor world, they call it carrying the briefcase, right? So it'd be great if they've carried the briefcase and actually had sold some. They understand marketing. They understand operationally how things come together. And maybe I'm skewed on my view, but I think a CEO has to have a strong financial acumen. So a little bit different than a financial background, but at least a good understanding when they're looking at the financials, they understand what they're saying. So they can have the high level conversations of growth with both the CEO and the CFO. When you look at some of the, let's start talking about a little bit of the emotional intelligence. Oftentimes a COO will be very even keeled, right? Not going to be too high, not going to be too low, right? They're going to have really good days. They're going to have bad days. They're human. But understanding that big picture of everything is fixable, nothing is off, right? Nothing is awful. Right? Nothing's going to make us $1 billion in a day. Nothing's going to lose us $1 billion in a day. Being able to maintain that steadiness, and I think that's a leadership trait of that COO, and I think that's where the other C-suite can really start to understand why they're in their position, as are other people. The other thing is really being able to hear what the CEO is saying, and then the strength to push back at times two ways. One is have some vulnerability to say, I don't understand what you're saying. Tell it to me. Say it to me in a different way. Explain it to me a different way. I had a conversation a couple of days ago with our CEO, and I said, I need a favor. I need for you to talk to me like I'm 12 years old and I'm 50 years old, right? I need the same time because there was just something that was not clicking in my head. Mm-hmm. And, it was a little bit of vulnerability on my side to go, I just need your help on this. Well, it was kind of like one of those wind-up cars. And then we were able to take off.
Feels like what you're describing is almost like a CEO whisperer.
Some people who might be on this call might be chuckling at that, but that certainly helps as well, is knowing how and when to speak to the CEO.
Correct. Knowing,
understanding their language and how they respond to things. And that's that higher level of emotional intelligence. Everyone says CEO and they have a picture of their mind, but I've talked to CEOs that are 20 years old running $30 million companies that they founded 18 months earlier with severe ADD, ADHD, and bouncing off the walls on everything. And you're sitting there going, I need to be able to meet this person in their space, in their headspace, I think is very important. And then knowing how to have those conversations, because the second pushback is, let's talk this through because I'm seeing it a little bit differently than you. I think you have some blind spots. Let's talk these through. And part of that is earning the trust of the CEO as fast as you can, but proving that they can trust you.
So definitely during the interview process, the owner, the CEO has to assess that. Is this the kind of person that can read me, understand me, stay ahead of me, stay with me, not run ahead, that I can have very frank, open conversations, almost like I can't have with anybody else? And can this person really get me, understand why I'm frustrated, understand where I want to go, and be that conduit that I can deposit a lot?
The trust becomes, it's immeasurable. And then it's, can this person implement? How crazy of an idea can I come up with before they look at me and go, that's too crazy, right? That can't happen.
Right. Great idea. Not now. Let's do that in quarter two. Wait, that's great, but not this week. Helping the CEO get organized with where we are with top projects and where we are with things. And let's not rattle the boat every time you get a great idea, right?
Right. Especially a big visionary CEO they'll spin a plate and they'll run away. And they'll say, okay, that's plate spinning, right? You got to keep that plate spinning. But it's not one plate, 2 plate, 3 plates. It's, okay, I just started spinning 40 plates and I got 40 more I'm going to start spinning tomorrow.
Yeah. Or what's worse, the CEO just went to a conference. Now they want to implement a new concept, a new idea, a new vision.
Always.
And then 6 weeks later, they go to another conference, and 3 months later, they go to another.
The best thing is the best COO is the one who knows how to tie up their CEO during conference season.
That's right. That's right. All right, let's land it with this because we have a couple minutes left. Let me ask you this. Let's land it with this. All right. So then the CEO then has to be able to turn around, because I like what you said earlier. They need to be able to interpret. They need to be a better, you said they need to be able to understand my language. So I'm going to throw in the concept of the interpreter, because then the CEO then has to turn around. And you say they need to be good at implementing. They have to then go speak a different language to rally the forces to get that done. That's the COO, isn't it?
Nail on the head with that one. It is. And the interpreting it's a great way to put it, because I talked about that calmness, and
right.
The CEO will have these great ideas, and it's okay to be excited about what you want to do and implementing it. What a lot of CEOs don't realize is that every time you come up with a new idea, there are a lot of people out there who go, oh, great, another idea, more work for me. I'm already working 47 hours a week. I really don't want to work 50 hours a week. So you have to, as a CEO, you're taking this idea and you're saying, okay, it's framing it, right? It's not BSing someone or lying to someone. It's framing it. And sometimes you look at the CEO and you go, this is a great idea. This will create revenue. We don't have the bandwidth. Can start. We're only in steps 2 or 3. And by step 3, if we don't have somebody in place, we're just going to really frustrate people, including yourself. Right. And those are the tough conversations sometimes of, let me explain to you why we're doing that, why I'm saying this to you, because in 3 days or 3 weeks, I don't want you calling me going, I'm so frustrated because this didn't happen. Right? There is a reality of that.
The imagery that I use a lot is air traffic control. Being able to run, you have some planes that are running, taking off. There's some that are landing. There's some that are flying, and there's some that are approaching. And so it's the CO is that.
Don't forget the geese going across the runway. And wait, why is there a dog over there?
Exactly. Because the CO then has to, a lot of times, let's apply that. I think that falls into the CEO sometimes has to go down to the front lines and be the interpreter at that level and help the managers resolve a lot of those conflicts. And then that's a different language altogether. The CEO has to be good at 3 languages.
At least.
And then you got to go to the bank,
Well, there's a CFO. The CFO will talk, and then you've got the CMO. How do you love that meeting? When you're the COO and you're talking the CMO, the CRO, the CFO, everyone has an agenda.
Everybody's got their own agenda. Let's just align the agendas, right?
Right.
The role of the CEO, it's to align the agendas.
Yeah, exactly. Make sure everybody understands what the vision is and the big picture. And really the other piece I'd say is the why. And that's the language that the COO that's probably the most important language they speak, which is the why. Because to sit there and go, well, the CEO said to do it, doesn't feel good.
Right. Let's pause there. And I say let's pause so we can continue this conversation later. Would you like to give any closing thoughts? Anything else you want to say?
Just thank you for having me. I was greatly appreciated. It's interesting. The first time you and I spoke, I think we had 15 minutes on the calendar and went way longer. And here we are. And this went very quickly. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation.
Every single time that we have talked, I have come away just learning more about my role, my industry, and it's really good to have a colleague out there chopping the woods. I really appreciate it. And all of you listening, please contact Joel. Joel, how do we contact you? Anybody who wants to hire you, consult with you, use you as a coach, as a mentor, you're open to all that, right?
The easiest way is probably email Joel M. Kahn, JoelMKAHN @gmail.com is send me a note and we'll have a conversation. I'm happy to do it.
That's great. That's great, man. And let's touch bases when you can come back. Love to have you back and let's continue.
No, thank you.
Want to dive into some of the areas. Appreciate it. My handlers are telling me that I've got to get off. So, hey, I love the people behind the curtains. Everybody, thank you very much for joining me. Please remember my website, MauriceTraining.com. You can also find my video library at winningintheworkplace.com. And starting next week, you're going to be able to have access directly to this podcast landing page at winningintheworkplacepodcast.com. So visit me on my website, contact me, anything you can do. And don't forget, keep Joel in mind. Anything you need from him, he's available. And thank you for coming. Joel, thanks. Have a great week. And everybody, have a good weekend.